Well, our country's political views, our laws, our religious practices, our cultural systems are often do presuppose the certain view of human value, of human dignity. And so when we're asking this question of what laws do we put in place, how should we live, what should we do, one of the most foundational questions that one can ask is one of, are humans valuable? Do humans have dignity? And what makes humans dignified? What makes us valuable? What gives us human dignity? And different views are going to look at this question and answer it differently, whether we have human dignity or not. And if we do have it, where does it come from? And how do we ground it? And this, I think, is a really important conversation to have. So that's what we're going to talk about on the show today. Before I get to your calls and your questions, my name is Ryan Pauly, and this is the show Think Well, the show that is designed to train you to think well about the Christian faith, the Christian worldview, and the culture so that you can engage the culture well, so that no matter who you are or what beliefs that you hold, whether you agree with me or disagree, hopefully we can have better conversations based on having a more well-informed mind of what others think and of our own position on how do we defend and explain it well. So this is actually part one of my cultural book study. So this year I'm doing three different book studies, one on culture, one on worldview, one on apologetics. And this is chapter one of this year book. There it is. What do I say when? A Parent's Guide to Navigating Cultural Chaos for Children and Teens, chapter one on human dignity. So I'm going to spend some time walking through this. If you got a copy of the book, join me for a conversation, whether it's at the YouTube, here on YouTube in the community feature, whether it's on Instagram. I created an Instagram channel at Ryan Pauly 3 is my Instagram handle, and there's a channel there to discuss the book studies, as well as on Facebook. Think Well on Facebook. I've kind of created I think if I did it right, an event there where you can kind of chat about the different books that are being read. So. I'd love to have you join in the conversation. If you don't want to join the conversation as far as reading, well, at least you can come each week and hear what I'm going to be chatting about. So this show today is going to be from this book written by Andrew Christian Walker, What Do I Say When? Now, let me just give you a very quick heads up on what's coming up that you can be looking forward to. Next week is going to be part one of my worldview book study. We're going to be walking through this, A Student's Guide to Ethics and Moral Reasoning. It's about 100 pages, produced by Crossway. You can pick up a copy of that and read it for the show next week. Each month is going to be a different booklet. And so the great tradition of Christian thinking is going to be in February. I forget what March is. But anyways, you can again check all the different social medias and YouTube community tab for more information on what book to order next. But that's going to be our worldview study. There's going to be 16 parts of this. So this is going to take probably like 2 years to complete. But that should be fun, kind of walking through different worldview questions from a Christian view. So that is next week, January 21st. The week after that, on January 28th, is going to be a break from book studies. I'm going to be doing an interview with Dr. Fuzz Rana on human origins. So he contributed, or he wrote to, or co-authored this book, Who Was Adam? A Creation Model Approach to the Origin of Humanity. And then he summarized really this massive amount of research into a chapter for the Comprehensive Guide to Science and Faith. He wrote a chapter here on the scientific evidence for Adam and Eve. So right now, the plan is, I think I have it all rescheduled and ready to go. This was supposed to happen, I think, in December. But busyness happens. January 28th, a conversation on science and human origins. Then on February 4 is going to be part one of my apologetics book study. Well, ultimately, I'm going to be going through this book, Natural Theology, edited by William Lane Craig and J.P. Moreland, looking at 10 different arguments for the existence of God based on natural theology. My show on February 4 is going to be an interview with Dr. Charles Taliaferro, I think that's how you say his name, who contributed to this Four Views book on natural theology. And then he wrote the introduction to this one on the project of natural theology. So February 4 will kind of be an introduction to natural theology of what this whole series is going to look like. And then the next 9 chapters are going to be on 9 different arguments for God based on natural theology. So that's February 4. Then after that, February 11 is going to be the next part, chapter 2 of our culture study. That is going to be looking at the topic of abortion. So anyways, there's the next 5 shows, or I guess 4 after this one, that you can have to look forward to. So if those things sound interesting to you, why don't you hit subscribe, like, follow, wherever you're listening, download, recommend, I don't know. I almost never say that. Yeah, if you just want to miss it, and join me for these studies, there's going to be conversation, and I think it's going to be fun. Also, I forgot to say this last week. Last week is my first show back. thank you for everyone who contributed to our year-end challenge. We ended up raising about 23 or just over $23,000. So God just incredibly poured out His blessing through generous and gracious individuals who gave joyfully to this ministry to allow this thing to keep flourishing. And so that just gave us a huge boost into 2024. I think we have about 74%, sorry, a huge boost into 2025. We have about 75% of our 2025 budget already met, which is super exciting. So very little is needed beyond this. And so one thing I love about just really successful year-end kind of campaigns like this is it means that hopefully the whole rest of the year I never have to ask for money or ask for donations or help because generous individuals have just contributed, and so we can just do this and provide free content and to continue to try to equip you and train you to live for God and to do what He's called you to do. And so I'm just so grateful for generous partners that have come alongside and make all this possible. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who gave and contributed to make this a reality. We are just so blessed and excited just to see what God is doing here with this ministry, with this YouTube channel and everything. And if you're not aware, this is actually a full ministry. It's not just a YouTube channel, but we are a nonprofit organization recognized by the United States government that really allows for me to create a lot of resources, not just this YouTube video and content and podcast, but a lot of different resources to go out to help equip and train the church. So with all that, thank you. Such a blessing, and hopefully you subscribe and like and continue to learn from the things that we are producing. But with that, let me jump into this so I can also get to your calls and questions. So again, if you have questions, you got to join me live or post. It's another advantage of following on Instagram or social media is that normally about 24 hours before the show on Monday afternoon, I will post a question on Instagram or somewhere that says, hey, what questions do you have on human dignity? That's the topic tomorrow. And if you can't listen live because you're listening on podcast or radio and you can't get here live on Tuesdays at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, you can always post a message through social media and I can get your questions and address those on the show. But if you are here live, then comment in the comment section in the live chat with a Q so I know that you are posting that and what to look for. Or you can also use the link that is posted there in the live chat to call into the show and discuss your questions with me. So with that, thank you for being here. Chapter 1, Human Dignity. One thing I really appreciate about this book is, again, it's written to parents, but it doesn't only have a parent vibe to it. I think that Andrew and Christian Walker have really laid out a case to where if you are a parent trying to raise kids, they're very practical steps to really give you a firm foundation first, an understanding of an issue, and then ways of like, here's what kids should know. And they break it down into different age groups, which I'll give you an example of. And so for this chapter on human dignity, really the beginning just lays out why is this important. And that's why I think that we need to start here. This is a radically important question and a great one to start this whole series with, because how we view human dignity, how we view human value really does cause a lot to flow out from that, right? Sean McDowell, in one of his books, has this worldview triangle, where he talks about at the top of the triangle are our actions, the things we do. And that's often all that we see is we see people do things. And the issue is like, well, how do you change behavior? How do you change someone's actions? Well, what is it that informs our actions? Well, the thing that informs our actions is what we value. Whatever you value is going to inform your actions. So if you value education, you're going to spend more time studying. If you value fun over studying, then you're going to spend more time playing video games or sports or the things that you do for fun. What you value naturally is going to come out in the things that then you do in your behaviors. Now, what is it then that forms our values? And our values are formed by our worldview. What our worldview is going to tell us or inform us what is valuable that then is going to be played out in the things that we do, in our behaviors. So if we have a worldview that says God exists and He created human beings with value, and human beings are valuable because they're created in the image of God, then you're going to see human beings having value, and therefore, you're going to behave in a way as if those humans have value and you're going to treat them well with dignity and respect. Now, that's going to be if you have that worldview, and if you're a non-Christian here listening to me right now, and you're like, yeah, but Christians often aren't respectful, do not treat people well, then you can absolutely call a Christian like a hypocrite or not living consistently because the way they act is not consistent with what they say they value. So often maybe there's a different value that is influencing them or directing those specific actions that are playing out in that moment. Now, at the same time, if your worldview is not a Christian worldview, but you have a different worldview that says that humans are the product of an unguided process of evolution or something like that, and we are just advanced robots or we are just advanced animals, and there's nothing inherent in us that has value, then that means that humans aren't intrinsically or inherently value, but our value is actually more instrumental, what we do, what we have, what we produce. And now the way you treat someone is going to be different because that person may or may not have value based on what they do or don't do, or what they can or can't do, or who they are. And so this worldview question is hugely important to think through of what are the big primary questions that are driving human value. Now then, obviously, we recognize that the uh, end result is that our laws, our regulations, our religious traditions, our political views are often informed by what we value, is what we want to see put into practice. And what we value is based on our worldview. And often that has to do with human beings involved. How should we view immigration? Well, are they valuable or not? How should we view the unborn? Are they valuable or not? How should we view the poor? Are they valuable or not? How should we view the elderly and the sick and the dying? Are they valuable or not? A lot of questions on euthanasia and abortion and immigration and even gun issues, right? Are the people who are getting shot in mass shootings, are they valuable? What has a higher value? Is it a freedom? Is it a person? How do we marry these two? I mean, these are hugely important questions that come down to this fundamental question of, is there human dignity? Now, there's an interesting question that is asked here in this book. And I really wish this book study was done with people sitting in front of me so I could really stop and pause. And so if you want to address in the comment section, I would love to hear your comments. But they make this claim that Christianity alone provides the best solution for a coherent reason to value a human person and is the necessary authority to confidently guarantee it. That Christianity really does provide the best solution for what we already recognize as being human dignity. Almost everyone will say, yeah, humans have human dignity. Now the question is, okay, we believe there's human dignity. You don't have to be a Christian to recognize that humans have value. The question is, what worldview actually grounds it? And so here's the question, I think a really interesting question. And it's this, they ask, can non-Christian systems arrive at a position of human dignity on their own that does not end up being arbitrary? Now, if you're not a Christian listening to me, and I hope that you would actually, that you would stop and think about this, and Christians, stop and try to consider this. Is there a non-Christian system or position that can arrive at the position that humans have dignity, inherent human dignity, that does not end up being arbitrary? Now, what does that mean? That it does not end up being, well, some people have it and some people don't. It depends on your height, your age, your skin color, or your abilities, your talents. It doesn't depend on how healthy or sick you are. Is there a way in which, from a non-Christian view, we can say there is inherent, intrinsic human dignity, that all people have value, independent of what you do or think or who you are or your race or ethnicity or gender? You have human value? Or do all non-Christian systems fall into this place of, if you're going to say humans have value, it's going to be on something arbitrary? Now, I think the big reason why are they making this argument? And again, if you want to offer a system, I think it's a good question. I'd love to hear callers or people in the comment sections maybe put forth how you could think that there's this system without it. But here's, I think, the fundamental question of, is there an authority above humans? Right? In at least a non-religious and non-theistic system, then you have no God above us, and humans are the highest authority. And so within that system, where do human rights come from? Where does human value come from? Well, it comes from whether the government, the highest authority, recognizes you as being valuable. It comes from whether the government recognizes you as someone deserving of having rights. And so if rights are only from the government, then if they have not given you a right, you do not have a right. Or can we say, no, the rights come from a transcendent place, something above and beyond the government? Well, then what is that thing that they come from? If it's not God, what is it? So in a Christian view, we recognize that God, creating us in a certain way, has created us with value, and therefore we can have it. Now, JCB comments in here, says, I think there are probably non-Christian views that can attest to human value, but none of them are secular. Okay, so maybe it's a different religious view that has some sort of theistic system, but maybe you're arguing that maybe it's not a secular views can't do it. Maybe that's an argument to make as well. That's a good point. Thanks for commenting that in. So they finish this kind of introductory section and say, look, the question is not whether there will be a concept of dignity at the heart of culture, because there always is. Every culture has some sort of concept of dignity. The question is whose concept of dignity reigns supreme. That's I think, a really, really good point. Is we all have, every culture is going to think some people are dignified, right? You can go to all the other cultures. Is it the Aryan race? Is it just men over women? Is it just white people over black people? Is it, everyone recognizes someone has dignity and value. The question is, well, whose concept of dignity and value is actually going to reign supreme? Is it only the elite, the rich? We saw that throughout a lot of human history, in which the poor had no dignity and the rich lorded it over them. Is it the educated over the uneducated? Is it the male over the female? Is it the white over the black? Is it, what is it? Everyone has a concept. So the question is not, do you have a concept? The question is, whose concept is actually going to be in charge? And then what ideas flow from that concept? So the beginning, I think, does a pretty interesting job of just trying to lay out a provocative series of questions to show why this question or why this topic of human value is so important. Now, then, as they do, so they kind of introduce, the next section then is a biblical overview. And so, okay, what does Scripture have to say about this? And they give 4 kind of main biblical principles that it's important for us to understand and communicate to anyone we're talking to, whether that's your children, whether that's your friends at school, or whether that's a neighbor that you're chatting with on the side. And the idea is this. Well, what is dignity? Well, dignity is, they define it, refers to the moral worth of a human being simply from existing, not from an attribute based on skin color, cognitive ability, athletic skill, age, height, location, or anything else. They then write, the good news of human dignity from a Christian worldview is that it is not parceled out by the sovereign decrees of human governments or human opinion. There's nothing you or anyone can do to truly subtract from or even add to the dignity that someone possesses. You can't take away someone's dignity in a Christian view, and you can't add to it, because we just simply have it because of who we are. So here are the 4 biblical truths that they kind of lay out here. Number 1, human dignity exists as a result of humanity being made in God's image. So from a Christian worldview, we recognize Genesis 1:26 and 27. God said, let us make man in our image, in the image of God. He created them, male and female, he created them. Now, what's really important, I've talked about this a lot on the show before, and I'll probably get into it as well as when we talk about gender here and other places. But this idea that we read in Genesis 1:27 is profound in the sense that it doesn't just say humans were created in God's image. In the image of God, he made them. Humans, he created them. Like, let me pull it up here. I think there's a few really important things. Let me put up on the screen. All right, Genesis 1:27, as you see there on the screen. All right, what's important to recognize here, and I think in this worldview conversation on human value and human dignity, is number 1, look at the times where it says God created. God created man. He created him. He created him. 3 times. Right? This recognizing we are not the creators. We are not the ones who make all things come into existence. We are not the ones who are in charge and in control, but we are created. Therefore, we are made for purpose. He is the maker. And I think this is profoundly important because, in one of the books I'm reading right now for my doctoral studies is written by Abigail Favali on the genesis of gender. And she writes this, within kind of the gender paradigm that she calls, is this really what they view as this constructivist view of reality, which redefines what truth is, and demands that we actually construct reality. We construct the way things are, that we are, in a sense, the creators. And she says this: according to the gender paradigm and this constructivist view of reality, Abigail Favali writes, there is no creator. And if there's no, here's where your worldview comes in. There's no creator. Therefore, we are free to create ourselves. Our body then becomes an object with no intrinsic meaning. We give it whatever meaning we want, using technology to undo what is perceived to be natural, and we do not receive meaning from God or our bodies or the world. We impose it. So I think one of the huge worldview questions here, in recognizing this first statement, is if I am the one in charge, if I am the creator, if I have this constructivist view of reality where I make the world as I want it to be, and I don't get meaning from God, I don't get meaning from my body, I don't get meaning from the world around me because there is no creator, then I'm the one in charge and I should be able to kind of do things the way that I want to do them. However, what we read in Genesis 1:27 is that that's constructivist view of reality is not biblical, that God is the creator and therefore I am not the one who's in charge to do whatever I want. He is the one that makes us, and we actually get meaning and value and dignity from him. We're also made in his image. Now, scholars are going to disagree on exactly what that means and how that gets played out, but what they all agree on is that it sets us apart from animals, that we are actually unique. We're not just smart animals, that we are something completely unique, being made in the image of God, whereas animals are not. The last thing here that's important is that it says, again, God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them. It doesn't say he created them, and it says he created them male and female. We recognize now the first distinction between men and women come in being a created feature, yet both men and women being made in the image of God. And I think what is so radically important here is that human dignity, as the first point in the book, exists as a result of humans being made in God's image, is that this applies to all, including male and female, simply because they're made in God's image. Again, Abigail Favali in her book, page 16, talks about kind of what the feminist movement in the later waves really tried to do is really try to erase this difference. Why? Why try to erase the differences? Because difference means not the same. And if you're not the same, how can we have equal human dignity or equal human value if we are not the same? And she writes this, quote, differences between men and women have too often been used to justify a strict hierarchy of value and roles between the sexes. That's true. So in an effort to reject this, feminist thought has typically argued that sexual differences itself with hostility and has downplayed differences in order to affirm equal dignity. So some will look at this and say, look, in order to affirm equal dignity, you have to downplay differences because if you're different, how can you be equal? It's a radical view of Christianity that says all, including men and women, are created in the image of God that actually gives us equal dignity. And so here Andrew Walker comments and says, human dignity is not a mere social construct, brute fact, or convention arrived at by consensus, or whatever majority deems it to be. To be truly protected, and I think this is really interesting, to be protected from arbitrary human opinion, dignity must be and is a divine concept that speaks about the unique status of human beings alongside the rest of God's created system. Now, Mirza, I see that you're here right now. You had commented in. I just responded to you like an hour ago. How would things look differently if morality is subjective versus objective? And I think here is one of those points: is that if morality was simply subjective, meaning all morality is simply just opinion, then you cannot necessarily be protected from arbitrary human opinions. Because a human can have an opinion like, let's say, African Americans are not fully humans and they should be enslaved. And if you get your opinion recognized by the majority of culture to be put into law that we can enslave Black people, then they're no longer protected because that opinion has won out. Now, in order to say, no, you can actually be protected from human opinions, that means you have to take the protections, meaning the fact that you are valuable and deserve dignity and respect and you should be treated well, outside of the category of human opinion and say, no, no matter what human opinions are, whether they think you're valuable or not, you still are. And therefore you deserve to be protected. And therefore, when someone takes away your value or treats you like you are not valuable, because you can actually take away value, but if someone treats you as if you're not valuable, then what they're actually doing is wrong, and we will protect you because they are violating your rights. They're violating your dignity. If morality was simply subjective, if all we had was human opinion, then I'd have a hard time finding how we protect people against arbitrary opinions. Another one of the points I made in my response to you is I think then at the same time, if morality simply is subjective and it's based on the consensus of the people or the majority opinion, then if that majority opinion becomes right, then to stand up against it would mean automatically by definition you're wrong. So then a social reformer that comes along speaking against slavery is actually going against the majority position by definition, going against what is right, because that's a majority position, making him in the wrong. And so how do we have social progress? Progress means we're getting to some sort of transcendent or objective standard outside of us, that we're getting better. Better in what way? Just changing opinions, or are we actually improving? So I think this kind of, profound question that they bring up here is that if we're actually truly going to protect people from just arbitrary human opinions and whatever the masses can get people to accept, we have to have some sort of dignity that is a divine concept that speaks about the unique status of human beings, not just simply that you are valuable because society sees you that way. So that's number one point, is that human dignity exists as a result of human beings being made in God's image. Number two, biblical concept here, and then I'll get to your questions. I see a few questions coming in. Travis, you call me out as lying. I'd love to know what you're lying about, what I'm lying about. Look, I may be mistaken. I may have said something, but I'm not lying because I don't have an intention to deceive. So just hear me clearly, Travis. I'm not intentionally trying to deceive anyone. You comment a lot on my show, and I let you comment, and you're free to comment. But when you say 100% of scholars agree that man created God in his own image, that is simply just not true. That's not true, because I'll interview a scholar that says no. So, look, Travis, if you want me to take you, I've said this to you privately, I'll say it publicly. If you want me to take you seriously and engage with your content, you need to take this seriously as well. And rather than just showing up and calling me a liar and saying things that are blatantly false, look, I may be wrong. Let me know where I'm wrong. I'd be happy to see and consider your position, but that just is not true. All right, all right. Let me jump to the last 3 points here really quickly. Number two, the idea of human dignity is a truly unique and revolutionary concept that Christianity introduced into the world. And Mears, I see that you're here. So what we saw in other cultures and throughout human history is that there was almost never a culture. In fact, I don't think that, as far as I'm aware, there was not a culture that recognized a universal human dignity until the Christianity really began to affect the way they saw people. There was always an elite group that objectified the poor. There was always the men that objectified the women. There was always the rich. There was always some sort of break. And so when you look throughout human history, this is one thing that is written about in the book Dominion by Tom Holland, the historian, not a Christian, is that it really is the Christian worldview that really radically changed how we saw people. Or you can even look at things like charity. Charity in ancient cultures, like in Greece and Roman cultures, charity was seen as a vice, not a virtue. Why should I be charitable? Why should I try to help someone? You got yourself into this mess, figure it out yourself. Or you look at some views that are kind of based on karma. This bad thing is happening to you because you deserve it. And actually, for me to give charity, for me to help and pull you out of this mess that you're in, would actually be hurting you because it's not allowing you to pay off the karmic debt that you owe. And so you're going to have to go through it again because you owe this debt that you need to pay off. And so actually the loving thing to do is to not help you. Right? There are huge worldview influences on charity and value and these things that we saw many cultures throughout human history not having this recognition of human dignity. And it really was the Christian view that started coming along. Not that Christians have always done this well, or not that we've always been right about it, but it is the teaching from Scripture that we just talked about of being created in the image of God that really did bring about the rights of all human beings rather than just of some human beings. Number three, human dignity stands as the foundation of Christian opposition to any assault on God's image bearers. Right? This is what we've seen. Why, Christians, while some did own slaves, it was Christians that stood up really in the opposition of slavery. Both in America and in England with Wilberforce. It was Christians that really have stood up in a lot of different ways and ways in which we could say certain actions are really evil and are really actually wrong. Again, when we look at social reformers throughout human history, it's because of an appeal to a higher transcendent standard, saying, government, you're wrong because you're taking away rights that I have. Well, where did those rights come from if we only get rights from government? And so we recognize that this human dignity should stand for Christians. If it doesn't for us, it should stand as a foundation for us to oppose any assault on God's image bearers. When people are being mistreated, then Christians should. Travis, I'm going to block you if you just continue to repeat the exact same thing. You can let me know where I've gone wrong, but to just show up and just keep calling me a liar, you're going to get blocked. All right, that's your second warning. All right, Travis, let's do this well. So that's point number 3, that we see that this is what Christians should do. Not that we always do it well, but this is what we should do. Point number 4, biblical teaching. Human dignity supplies Christians with the ability to amicably disagree while respecting the value of all persons. This is how we should be able to have a conversation with someone who thinks differently and give them respect. Now, do we do this well? No, we don't. We often are not very respectful with people who think differently. We don't treat them well. We mock them, we criticize them, we call them out, we do everything, but actually sit. Here's what I think respecting someone who thinks differently looks like, is to sit down across the table from someone and say, hey, I respect you enough that I think I can learn something from you. I want to listen to you, not to just prove you wrong and not to just say how dumb you are, but to actually believe that I have something I can learn, ways that I can grow and ways that I can improve. And so we should be able to look at people who think radically different than us, not just on theological issues, but on political issues and social issues, and say, look, we disagree. We are on radically different ends of this, but I still respect you. I respect you and I want to listen to you and I want to treat you with dignity. And this is what should happen based on a Christian teaching of respect and a Christian view of dignity. Now, to finish off, I think, so to kind of give you a perspective of the book, what they then do is to say, okay, if you have small kids, here are some basic biblical truths, and they call them first floor truths. This is like up to 4 years old, where it's like your little kid should know God created all humans in his image, and that humans can think and love one another. Now, the next step up, if you have like 8 to 12-year-olds, the biblical truth would be God created all humans in his image. Human beings are created with the capacity to reason with their minds and love one another relationally. And it's like, okay, if your kids are over 14 years old, then here's the biblical truth. The imago Dei means that humans are created in the image and likeness of God. Humans are created to reflect God morally, spiritually, and intellectually. Humans are rational and relational beings, rational and relational beings. We have a purpose, and we can partake in fellowship with God. The imago Dei is the Latin translation of the image of God. Now, there's a lot of different points that they kind of lay out like this, of these truths, that God created humans with humans worthy of respect. Human beings respect means to be kind and polite. Humans deserve respect because God created us in his image. We should be kind, polite, and loving to everyone simply because God created them, and then human beings matter to God. And so those are those first floor young kid truths to kind of take and say, okay, now how do we apply this? And then they give conversation starters. Again, here's just a little brief snippet for the little kids that gets expanded on for the older ages. How did God create all humans? What can humans do since we are created in God's image? What are some ways that we can love one another? What does it mean to respect? How can you be kind and polite to others? Why do humans deserve respect and love? Did you do anything to deserve respect and love? Why should we be kind, polite, and loving to everyone? How can you be kind, polite, and loving to others? Who matters to God? Why does every single human matter to God? Right? Those are the kind of first level truths, these conversation starters that I think are really helpful. So if you want to chat more about those, we can chat. If you want to put some comments or questions in the live chat to say, hey, what about this? Or what do they say here? Or what do they give to older kids? I'd be happy to talk about that. Or if you want to call in, feel free to call in. You can jump in the queue. But Mirza, I see you are here. And so let me pull you out of the green room. Mirza, thank you for calling in. Always good to chat with you. Happy 2025.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, good.
Uh,
And I don't know why. Hold on,
Hi, I
your
don't know if you
audio
answered
is
all my
coming.
questions in the chat or not.
Sorry,
Can
one
you hear
second.
me?
Your audio is coming through my computer and not my headphones.
Oh, that's
And I don't
okay.
know if can anyone who is listening comment on whether you can hear Mirza. Um, I just hope it's not like an echo, or else I can just pull my headphones out. Um, why is it? Oh no, my microphone has not been my. Guys, I'm sorry. It looks like the first 35 minutes I've been recording with my computer microphone, not my one sitting right in front of me. Let me
It's
look at this
actually
here really
fine.
quickly. Sorry, Mirza. Hold on one second. Let me make sure I
No
get
problem.
my audio fixed. There's sound. I normally check. I normally check if all my stuff is working properly before I
Na
do anything. But
telefonu
of course
sam.
I didn't. Hold on. Let me
Sorry
turn
about
this
that.
off.
Somebody's asking me something.
I'm sorry, everybody. I'll turn this back on. See if this works. All right. Oh my goodness, that's different. I think it's probably different for all of you.
All right,
I'm
can you
sorry
hear
about
me?
that.
Yeah,
I can, and you're coming through my headphones now.
I'm
Let
on the
me
phone,
turn you
sweetie.
down.
Go. Okay.
All right. Yes. Mirza,
I
what's
don't.
on your mind? Hey, thanks for calling in.
I, I don't know if you answered all of the my questions in the chat. I had a couple,
Yeah, I haven't gotten to
but
those
by
yet.
the time I switched from okay. Right. So my point was that the morality being not being like how would you say it, objective. Morality not being objective doesn't mean that it's not important or enforced or that people won't act based on it. That the idea that if there's no objective morality, then there's no morality at all is that just doesn't ring true to me.
I would agree with you. That's not true. So here's the point that I'm making.
Uh,
In a subjective, if morality is only subjective, then you absolutely can have a group of individuals create some rule that they think is good and put that into law and force everyone to follow. But that rule by definition is arbitrary because it's based on their opinion, not some sort of objective standard within reality itself. And so I think that
so
that's
isn't
actually, and
that
that was, well, that was one of the points I made to you in the comment was I think that in that view, then every form of discrimination or judgment becomes unjust discrimination because someone is arbitrarily making a rule and then forcing you to follow it, even though you don't agree.
well, isn't that what actually happens though? People make arbitrary rules and you have to follow them. And you mentioned slavery. We actually had slavery,
Right. So
and
here's
people
I think
thought
the
it good.
difference. If that happens within a subjective moral system, is if all we have is subjective morality, then that arbitrary rule actually by definition becomes good because the majority have agreed upon it. And therefore those who are being affected negatively or discriminated against because of it have nothing to stand on to say, hey, this isn't fair. All they can say is, I don't like it. That's it. Within an objective
Right.
system, when a government actually creates a law like slavery is good, you can actually stand up and say, not just, I don't like it, but you can say, this is wrong because what you are doing goes against reality. And so there's actually a grounding that someone can stand on and object to that arbitrary opinion that has been placed in a law and get laws changed and make laws better.
But how is it arbitrary though? That's the thing. I mean,
What is it based on in a subjective system?
uh, so morality it's not objective as in written in stone. It's based on our nature. It's based on logic. It's based on utility, right? And if that weren't the case, the world would be different. There would be no slavery or genocide or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right. So what you just said. So you said it's based on our nature. What about our nature gives us morality?
So empathy, sense of fairness,
Why are those? But why are those
and
things good?
self-interest, logic. Why are they good? Because they're part of our nature, right? I mean, that doesn't
So
matter.
well,
You don't
that's
want to be
circular.
cheated, do
So
you? Do you don't want to? Right, but no, it's not circular. It is what it is. That's what I'm saying. We have these things and we act according to them.
Okay, but you don't get, right, there's a common phrase, you don't get an is from an ought. So why ought I follow my nature?
You don't have to.
Like, we know that poison kills people, but why is it wrong to
Right.
poison someone?
I. Why is it wrong to? Because I don't want to be poisoned.
Right, so you just don't want to. Notice how you didn't say
Exactly.
because it's wrong. You're just like, well, I don't want to.
Right, right. I don't want to.
So
What we
what
were
if
arguing was the source of morality, not what it is now, but what is the source? Source is I don't want to get poisoned. Now you can say, well, okay, I am right to poison you. There's nothing morally wrong. And to that I say, F you, because I don't want to be poisoned.
so what if
Why,
someone's
why should it be any different?
so what if someone else's wants are different than yours?
Then we battle it out, I guess, which is what happens, isn't it?
Well, no. Well, that would be arbitrary then, right? It just whoever wins, whoever's stronger gets to set the moral standard.
Which is
And then
what
if
exactly
someone
happens in the world, right? That's why we had slavery. That's why there were genocides. That's why all these bad things happen.
so no, I
Everybody who did bad things think that they're good in their that think that they have good reasons. People don't. Nobody believes that they're evil. They all think that they're doing well. If there was one single moral standard, then these things wouldn't happen. There wouldn't be no difference of opinion in in
so I
in,
think
in morality,
so I
basically.
think so yeah, and so well, I'm happy we can talk a lot more about this next week because next week is also going to be on ethics and moral reasoning.
Okay,
But
yeah,
I
I
think
won't keep you long. I
no,
have
no,
to
we
make
can
dinner.
definitely chat about it here.
Uh,
If other people want to call in, they can. But I think here's the difference: is that what you've admitted is true within a secular framework. That because there is no objective morality within secularism, all we have are people battling out their opinions, and the strongest opinion wins. And therefore, whatever the law is arbitrary in a sense, is just whatever the strongest opinion was. And therefore, if someone has a different opinion than you, Mirza, and they win the battle, then they force you to follow their opinion. I think by definition, that is unjust discrimination. And that is the definition of oppression, is when you force someone to just go along with your opinion. I mean, that's what culture pushes back against it with when it comes to Christianity, is they don't want Christians to get into public power and then create laws like on the right to life and marriage and force them to live out a Christian moral standard. I mean, they see that as being horribly evil, but that is all that we have if secularism is true. Would you disagree?
Not well. It's not horribly evil. Humans have nature in common. We have our common nature. We all we all love our kids. We have empathy. We understand you should be treated. You should treat others if you want to treat them well, and so on. So there's logic involved. There's utility involved. For example, how should the world be structured? Would you How would you make the world if you did not know what position you'll be in it? That's a fair question. Would you like Christians running everything if you were Muslim? Of course not, right? So there's logic behind, there's human nature behind it. But it isn't written in stone. It doesn't exist outside human minds either. That's the point.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's what I would say here really quickly is you ask what's the difference in a Christian view. The Christian view is, and I get that you think the Christian view is wrong, but it seems like you're not even recognizing that my view is different than yours because you keep saying, well, it's all the
No,
same.
I'm not saying it's
And
wrong. I'm not saying
so
it's wrong. I'm just saying what the morality is based on. What we are basing on morality is logic. In fact, democracy is not Christian view. That came from Romans and Greeks. Christian
okay,
view
so
was there's a king who rules by divine right.
yeah.
So separation of church and state was actually not a Christian invention. It came from before Christianity, which is why, for example, the Capitol and the White House look like Roman and Greek buildings and not medieval churches. There's right.
Sure, but
Anyways, go
okay,
ahead.
so that's a different point. So what I'm just trying to say is, in a Christian view, it is not simply my opinion versus your opinion, and whoever's opinion is the loudest or the most popular or gains the approval of society becomes right. What we're actually saying is that there is a true opinion and that we could be wrong. And so just like if I somehow convince the entire world that the earth is flat and I get everyone in school teaching that the earth is flat, that doesn't make the earth flat. It means that I somehow got everyone to be deceived, to start living and believing false things because those things that they believe contradict reality. So in my view, morality
Right.
functions like science, to where it doesn't matter who is the
No,
stronger opinion that gets put into
the
law.
flaw there
The Okay, go for it.
the flaw there is that you cannot how you gonna convince everybody that the world is flat, because it's not, right? You can try to do that, and people actually do that, and according to that, they're not wrong. I mean, they're just an argument, but they're consequences. Basically, you have to look at consequences. Would you like what you're imposing on the others to happen to you? That's one thing to, and people are still going to do it. People are still going to have slavery and genocide and so on. But the point
So
is, I'm not saying what ought to be. I am saying, let's figure out what is and see what the world would look like based on that, and if it matches the prediction. Like, if there was one moral standard that everybody agreed upon, then all the morality would be same across the globe and throughout time, and that's not the case. Even in this country, like generation ago, homosexuality was considered wrong, gay marriage was considered wrong. Now it's not. The sex outside marriage was considered wrong. Now it's not. So clearly morality changes over time, and it changes across the globe. In some places polygamy is just fine, here it's horrible, and so
okay,
on.
so
Does that make sense?
Mirza, what your comment here is actually doing is that it's a confusion of epistemology and ontology. Now, oh, is that a
Sorry,
big fire truck or
I'm
something?
outside.
Okay.
No, ambulance.
No, ambulance. Okay. Now, for everyone listening, epistemology would be the study of how we know what we know, and ontology is the study of what is. They're philosophical categories of what is versus how do we know. And so what I am arguing here is that there is an ontological reality, that things actually exist the way that they are, and their existence, their ontology, is different from what we know about them. And so your argument is that because we are all disagreeing, that because epistemologically we can't figure it out, therefore there is no ontological reality. Or the fact that we disagree means there is no true ontological reality. And I'm saying just because we may not know something does not mean that something is not true about reality. And I think that's a confusion between epistemology and ontology, where we're taking how we know things or our confusion about things and then taking that and imposing that backwards and saying, therefore, there is no true reality because we disagree. And if there was a true reality, we would all agree. Our agreement, our disagreement has no bearing on whether there's a true reality out there or not.
Not exactly. It's not about us as people. It's about which theory makes best predictions, right? So if there is some sort of what is it, objective morality, we can expect world to look this way. If it's not, we can expect world to look that way. So basically, you're testing different theories based on what you see. It's not we're not deciding what reality is. We're just trying to ascertain it, basically. And
okay. So then,
and you cannot say, okay, well, we could all be wrong, therefore we are all wrong. You can only go with knowledge you have, and the knowledge we have indicates that there's no objective morality. There just isn't.
So, okay, so within that, how do you account for the fact that almost all human civilizations throughout all of human history have had a kind of a core fundamental shared moral system, like murder is wrong? Like that would be one example. Yeah. If you look at historians,
there's plenty of murdering even right now. People, they're dropping bombs on women and children. I mean, it's wrong in your own group, not in the other groups.
Hold on, Mirza, hold on.
It works, right?
Okay, define murder in that sense for me.
It's like murder, killing innocent people.
So I don't think that's the correct definition of murder, because we don't recognize that all killing is wrong. Right?
So basically, it's not. Yeah.
Murder is defined as the unjustified killing of innocent human beings. So self-defense is not murder because we recognize there's a justification. And there's some killing in war that we recognize is not murder because it's justified. Right? So people are going to argue.
Isn't all killing justified?
No, of course not.
Like nobody kills for shits and giggles. You always justify it somehow.
Well, a person may justify it, but that doesn't mean it's actually justified. So if someone goes, Mirza, work with me, right? Because I think what I'm saying is not controversial. If Bob, my next door neighbor, just walks randomly down the street, sees someone there and shoots him in the head, and the cops pull him over and say, "Why'd you do that?" And he goes, "I don't know, I felt like it. That's my justification. I wanted to." We're not going, "All right, you're innocent, Bob, go free." We go, "No, that's not a good reason." But if someone is breaking into his house and has a knife to his kid's neck and he shoots him and he goes, this was self-defense, he was about to kill my family, we go, okay, that is an appropriate justification. Now here's the only point I'm making. The justification may change. What we consider to be justified or not justified may be different in culture, but virtually every single culture throughout human history has recognized there are unjustified killings that are absolutely wrong, that murder, that unjustified killing of an innocent human being is wrong.
So only justified killings are right. So I mean, that makes no logical sense. That's a tautology.
Why doesn't that make sense?
Right, because you shouldn't kill unless you want to kill. You shouldn't kill unless you have a reason to kill. Well, you do everything with a reason. I mean, you're not saying that murder is wrong now. You're just saying that certain murders are not wrong based on some circumstances, which is not objective at all. It's not an objective law that says killing innocent people is wrong.
Then you're not understanding my point. I'm not saying some murder is right and some murder is wrong. Because that's not what I just said.
Because that's how you define murders. You just say if it's not wrong, it's not murder. Right.
There's a difference between killing and murder. Virtually, like every dictionary is going to lay this out. There's a difference between killing and murder. Killing is when you cause someone to die. Murder is the unjustified killing, unjustified taking of human and innocent life. And I would say, hear me clearly, there is no unjustified taking of innocent human life ever that is good. All murder, defined as unjustified killing of innocent human beings, is wrong. Not all killing is murder, but all murder is wrong. Okay. Justified killing is okay. So, in war or self-defense, there are justified killings.
So it's okay to bomb civilians.
Is it justified?
You're reverting the question. The question is it moral? Is it justified? Is it moral? I mean, that's the thing. The point is there is no rule that says you cannot be killed. There is no rule if somebody is justified to kill you. Now I have a good answer to your thing with Bob. And why do we put Bob in prison? Because I don't want to get shot. Why can we shoot somebody in self-defense? Because I want to defend my family.
So
it's a logical utilitarian reason right now. If Bob doesn't agree, F him. Who cares?
So you are going to lock Bob up in jail because you don't like something he did. What if someone locks you up in jail because they don't like what you did?
They'll do that. The point is, it's not that I don't like something he did. I don't want to get shot. Does that make sense? I don't want to randomly get shot, so people who do that should be locked up. Now you can say, okay, well, there's no objective reason to do that, and to that I say, F you, I don't want to get shot. That's the reason. There's no greater reason than wanting to survive. There's no greater justification than wanting to survive. That's just part of our evolutionary biology. That's, to protect ourselves, to protect our families, and out of that comes morality, basically. There's no, it's right.
So I think you've done a wonderful job at laying out a very clear distinction between our views and a secular versus a Christian view.
Right.
Is that the only thing that you can say to that person is, oh, I just don't want to get shot. Versus so that's in a secular subjective moral system. All it is I don't want to get shot. There is no moral duties upon other people. Within a Christian view, I could actually say you should not shoot people because it is wrong. And that is something that within a subjective moral framework that without a Christian, I think without a view of God,
but you can't say that.
Oh, absolutely. I can. I just
did.
Say
that. No,
and it's true within Christianity.
Because if you justify it somehow, then it's okay. Those are your words.
No, that's not my words, Mirza.
Yeah.
I clearly said.
So let me ask you something.
Hold on, Mirza, hold on. You just put words in my mouth that I did not say, and you won't let me defend myself. So hold on.
Go ahead.
I did not say that anyone can just justify themselves and it becomes okay. There are legitimate, just like morality is objective, there I think are objective justifications. There are things that are actually adequate to justify doing actions. Now, and that's where there's another. It's no one deciding it. We discover it.
Who discovers it?
We do as humans.
What if people decide? Who? How?
The same thing we discover everything else.
In the end, it's your opinion, right? Say in the end, it's all your opinion.
Is it just my opinion?
There's no math behind it.
Is it just my opinion?
Go ahead.
You're not letting me finish you just keep cutting me off and just
Go ahead. I'm
claiming
sorry. I'm
false
sorry.
things about
There's
me.
a little delay, so I thought you ended it, and then I say
Okay.
something, and then I'm
Is
sorry.
it
Go ahead.
is it just my opinion that gravity exists?
No,
Of course not. Why not?
you can see gravity.
Right, we can see it. And it's something that we have discovered, we did not invent. No one created gravity, no one invented gravity. We discovered it as a fact about reality based on our observation. We can see
Yes.
morality too, and we can discover morality in a similar way. You can see moral actions. You can see someone put a gun to someone else's head and shoot them in the head. That is a thing that you can see. And I think that we can discover that that is wrong in a similar way. Now, it may use different reasoning abilities, but that's the part of what we're going to talk about next week. Is that what I'm saying, Mirza, is from my view, morality is a built-in aspect of reality that exists outside of us, and we discover it. Therefore, my opinions about what is right and wrong can actually be right or wrong. To where if I have an opinion that slavery is good, that I am wrong because we recognize about reality that slavery is wrong, and so then we can have right and wrong opinions about it.
How?
I think
Like,
because
gravity
we
is
can.
not an opinion. How can you distinguish what you think is objective versus what's your opinion?
So I think we're going to talk a lot more about that next week, because that is the show's ethics and moral
Okay.
reasoning.
So
How
let
do
me ask you
we
one more question.
reason morally? Go for it.
Let's say somebody wants to murder you and your family because you live on a land that's promised to him by God. Would you defend yourself? Would you think that's right?
I would probably defend myself. I don't want to just get killed.
So, but wait a minute. Objectively speaking, God told him to do this.
You're asking about my feelings, Mirza. You're asking. Look, it's like if.
So you think you
hold on.
defend
It's
yourself,
like
but think that's wrong to do?
If I put it this way, let me just change the analogy really quick. If I committed murder, would I want to go to jail? Well, of course not. I don't want to go to jail, but that doesn't mean it's wrong to throw me in jail. But it's like, would you try to defend yourself and defend your innocence? Would you, or just, it's like, no, I wouldn't want to go to jail. So the question here,
no, that's a different analogy. I'm asking about my analogy, which basically is in the world today, happening right now, as well as the Bible. If somebody wants to kill you and your family because God promised him the land, let's say that's objectively true. God promised him the land and told him to do this. Would you be like, well, I guess that's right. Let's just lay down and get killed. Would you be like that? Of course you wouldn't, right?
Right, because I think we have a natural tendency to want to defend ourselves. But the question is what is taking place right or wrong?
So you're saying it would be wrong for you to defend yourself and your family in that case?
Let me put it this way. It sounds like what you're addressing is the Israelite conquest of the Old Testament. Is that the analogy you're bringing up? God promised them the land.
But not just that. I am trying to give you an explicit thing where your natural instinct of what's right and what's wrong conflict with what objective right and wrong would be if you believe this stuff. So if you really believe that there's objective right and wrong, and objectively this person has right to kill you and your family to take his land, would you go along with that?
So if I am on someone else's property and I am not supposed to be there...
No, you're not. You live there. You live there for generations. And then God promised him land, and he has to kill you and your family. I mean, I'm not...
So
don't
again,
try to change the analogy.
No, well, so that's why I asked you if you're talking about Israel in the Old Testament. And we recognize clearly that God sent the Israelites in, yes, to capture the land, but it was also God gave the people living in that land an extra 400 years because the iniquity, he says, their evil had not risen to him yet. And so there's an aspect of the conquest of the Israelites that was an aspect of judgment, that God is judging them for their evil, not simply just the land. And so there's other details of that story that you're not bringing into your analogy. And so if I am on a land...
you and your family are evil. Yeah. And you and your family are evil, and your great-fathers and your great-great-grandfathers, they're all evil. You just be fine with somebody killing your family.
Would I be fine with it? No. This is
you're
asking about... No, hold on. What notice your question, though, Mirza, is that you're asking about my subjective personal preference versus what is right and wrong. So would I be fine with them killing my family? No. But if my family is doing wicked, evil things and we get
captured and given the death penalty, then that would be just, because we are being punished for crimes that we have committed. So yes, it would be just
Really?
to sentence people to, of course. I mean, it's like, think about, let's
So
say
kids,
there's a,
oxen, sheep,
hold on. Let's say that there's a man. Let me give you another analogy. Let's say there's a man, and then I'm going to get to some other questions. Let's say there's a man that commits mass murder. He goes out and murders 1,000 people. And then you ask his mom, are you fine with him getting the death penalty? She'd probably be like, well, no, I don't want my son to die. But now, or then you go, are you fine with getting the death penalty? Do you want to die? Well, probably not. But is it just? Is it fair to give him the death penalty based on what he's done? A lot of people would say yes, unless you're just against the death penalty. So the point is that there is a justice, and then there's a personal preference that you're asking about.
Except these people were not being killed for something they did. They're killed for being on a land that God gave to other people. So that you're just basically justifying after the fact. The purpose is to basically take their land, not to punish them. And really, little kids and sheep and oxen and all the animals. I mean,
Scripture is clear that they were punished for their wickedness as well.
Where does it say that?
It says the iniquity of the Canaanites had not yet risen to me. There's a verse, I forget where.
What exactly did they do? How about Moabites? The killing of Moabites?
They were sacrificing. They were burning children alive to Molech. They were practicing bestiality. They were raping each other. They were, child sacrifice. They were.
How do you know that's true? Horrible. Did they have a trial? How about Moabites, for example? Let me. Okay, I know this specifically. Moabites.
Hold on before we jump on. Before we jump on, Mirza. Before we jump, I just want to like come to some sort of conclusion with you.
Right,
we have historical documentation from these cultures and from records about these cultures that people like the Canaanites were sacrificing children to Molech, that they were stealing babies from their parents, placing them in the molten hands of their idol, and letting these children burn alive as they would play drums. They were practicing bestiality and other things. Now, so here's the question. Hold on.
See, that's the thing. Go ahead.
I can give you citations in historical peer-reviewed journals citing these facts about history. So let me just ask you this. If that is true, if these historical documentations about the Canaanites practicing child slavery and burning children alive to their god Molech is true, what do you think should happen to people who are doing that in society, who are kidnapping children and burning them alive against the will of the parents?
Individuals who do that should be punished for doing that.
And I would argue that's what we see in Scripture.
No, because they killed women, children, oxen. In fact, Moabites, they were killed because Moabites women seduced Israelite men, and this caused a disease. So they killed everybody except young virgins. Which, I mean, come on, seriously, they were not killed because of sacrifice of children or this or that, but because they seduced Israelites to sexual immorality.
Okay, I think that's a very. I'll just say that's a very narrow. That's a very narrow view of looking at the biblical story.
That's what the Bible
what was
says.
actually taking
That's what
place.
the Bible says.
Well, I'm also giving you what the Bible says, and you're rejecting it. I'm saying here's what the Bible also says, and you're rejecting that aspect and looking at just one sliver. So all that to say, I'll give you the final word.
I saw nowhere. Okay. Well, anyways, damn, I had a good point. I forgot it. So the point is basically the morality. Logical morality fits the world we see now. You're saying you have some objective morality, but you can justify anything. You can justify any murder. Well, those people were bad. Well, this, that, and the other thing. You say, and God clearly gave Israelites this land, and that's why they did it. That's the reason they did it, not because of these people did something else. It's obvious. Even now, why are they killing Palestinians? Come on, seriously.
Okay,
anyways,
so
go ahead.
Well, actually, I said I'd give you the last word, but I don't have another caller here, and I just looked through the questions, and I don't see any other questions come up because all the questions that came in were from you. So people are still here, and they're listening, and so they must be enjoying this conversation. If someone wants to post a question, let me say this. If someone wants to post a question, I've given you, Mirza, about 35 or 40 minutes. So if someone wants to call in and jump into a conversation, I have about 20 minutes left in the show. Or if you want to post your question, post it there in the live chat. I'd be happy to discuss it. But let me... Mirza, what I think is difficult is we can always point to hard things. Like you bring up the Palestinians. I mean, that is a conflict that people are going to argue about, and different sides have different opinions. And so that is a true fact about moral reality, is that there's debate, there's discussion, and there sometimes seems to be a gray area. But as I've said before, I think to
So
you,
it's not objective.
Hold on, is that just because there's a gray area does not mean that there's not also a black and white. And so what is often claimed about objective morality, if there is just one thing that is always wrong and wrong independent of what we think about it, then objective morality exists. And I may not be able to make sense of all the different situations that go on in culture because we recognize there's a lot of complexity to things. But if there's just one thing that's wrong, then there's an objective morality. And so this goes back to the first point that you made, and the question that I asked you was, I think if a subjective morality, if morality is within subjectivism, I think that we should see a few things. Number one, we should see people not getting mad at other cultures. We cannot just or criticize condemn other cultures, and we do. We judge the Nazis for what they did in World War II, but they were only following the law. In fact,
that's not a culture.
The Nazi guard said we were just doing what we were told. We were following the law. Who are you to judge us? I think that if subjectivism is true, it turns every.
I don't see that.
What about it?
You can still follow your own moral code. You can still follow your own moral code and take it seriously if there is no objective moral code. I don't see how it follows that if there's no objective moral code, you'll be understanding of other people. That just doesn't follow.
In your view, let me ask this. In your view, can you criticize people who have a different moral system as being wrong?
Depends on what their moral system is. Like, so if somebody wants to, I don't know, marry 10 wives, have at it, Haas. I mean, I don't care. You know, if somebody wants, if his moral system is to harm me, F you, you know, it's, in fact, you ask about the mother whose son killed 1,000 people, right? The point of that is the rule should be made before the action, not after the action. So we should ask that mother, you know, if somebody kills your son, should he be punished? And that the same rule would apply to your son. That's the called reciprocity.
Okay, so hold on a second. I'm trying to simplify this for myself, and I think for everyone listening. If someone goes out, let's say this son, and he cold blood murders 1,000 people, right? Is he and he thinks he's right and he's doing what he wants to do? Is he wrong?
Yes, according to my view.
Okay, but his view is right.
How is it right?
He thinks he's right. He wants to do it.
So
if morality is truly subjective, then how can you punish him for doing something that is not actually wrong? It's just something you don't like.
It's wrong according to my view because I don't want to get shot.
Okay, so now for you now to force your opinion onto him and control him using your opinion, how is that not right? How is not the oppression, the definition of oppression?
Because does it matter? I mean, you're not free to do whatever you want, because the greatest freedom for everyone is not the greatest freedom for each person. That's what I'm saying. There's a social contract of I won't harm you if you don't harm me. You know, unless of course you think that God gave you the land, or those people are horrible, or it's justified in some way to get some whatever. You know, but there's a social contract, and if you break that contract, basically, if you treat me differently than I treat you, then all bets are off.
Who creates a social contract?
We do.
And it's based on what?
Self-interest and empathy and human nature and logic.
So self-interest of the majority.
Doesn't have to be a majority. How would you know you'd be a majority? That's the thing. That's the thing. How would you know you'd be a majority?
How does the minority get their self-interest into law if it disagrees with the majority?
They argue on individual rights.
So you would have to convince whoever's in the majority of your view in order to get your view into law. So social
Right.
contract theory, by definition, privileges the majority against the minority and then uses the majority opinion to oppress and discriminate against the minority.
Not exactly, because everyone in majority knows that they could be a minority. So
It,
safeguarding minority rights is safeguarding your own rights.
so
You
if
might be
you,
against black people. So Irish white guy could be against black people today. Tomorrow everybody could be against the Irish white guys. You understand that other people's rights are your rights. Does that
so
make sense?
for sure. So you could have a majority say, I want to create laws based on the self-interest of everybody, but that almost never happens throughout human civilization.
Doesn't it? We
I
got
mean, look
United
throughout human
States. That's
look
the
throughout.
whole point of
I
right.
mean, that's what people are fighting constantly, is that our laws are discriminating against minorities, about our laws are racist, or our laws are homophobic or transphobic, or our laws are whatever. And people are constantly arguing that our laws are forms of unjust discrimination against minorities.
So how is that a point in your favor?
Oh, that's a great question. So the reason why is that in your view, that is actually the right system. That is the
Right.
only system. That is the only system that we have. And so by definition, laws are simply the opinion of the majority that then, if not taken into account, is used to oppress or discriminate unjustly against the minority.
Right. Right. You can have bad things happen, and they do.
There you go. So
They do. I
now
mean,
in my view, an objective moral standard and a transcendent view of human dignity actually stands up for the minority and all people and says it doesn't matter what the majority believes. It doesn't matter what the majority puts into law. You have rights, value, and dignity that cannot be taken away, even if the majority tries to do so.
no.
But in your view, hold on. In your view, correct me if I'm wrong, in your view, if the majority decides black people don't have dignity and we're going to enslave them, and that's what they pass into law, then that becomes the law, and therefore that becomes the social contract and the right thing to do.
That's because I recognize that I am not an arbiter of truth and objective morality. You think you're speaking for objective morality. What you're doing is imposing your opinion on other people.
No, because it's not
That's
my
why
opinion.
well, where did it come from then? Your book? I mean, come on, seriously. Other people disagree. There's no way to know. There's no test you can do to decide what's morally right. Now you can say, okay, this feels right, but then I give you an example of your family getting murdered, and you're like, well, we were wicked people. So no, there's nothing mathematical. There's nothing scientific about your approach. You're just basically giving me your belief that you have the ultimate truth and imposing it on other people. This is why we had slavery, and this is why we're fighting for gay rights. We're not fighting for gay rights against secular people. We're fighting for gay rights against Christians
Right.
because
Okay.
they say this is the morality and you have to do it this way.
Okay, so let me. I have two questions. So first of all, let me just say that's why this topic, ethics and moral reasoning, is next week, and I'm going to go into moral reasoning. And so anyone listening now, join the conversation next week as we talk about moral reasoning, because I just want to lay out clearly for everyone listening the fundamental difference is that, in my view, if I'm right, and I could be wrong about this, Mirza, but if I'm right and that there's objective morality and objective human dignity, then no one can take away someone's value because they just want to. But in your view, the majority can take away someone's value if the majority deems that person is not value. And I think that's a major problem with social contract theory. So now based on that, so here's a question based on what you just said. If your view of social contract theory is right, what rights, you said Christians are taking away gay rights. What rights did they have that were taken away? Because, for example,
right
like
to get married, right to
they
be in a
didn't-
relationship,
but
right to
they- hold on.
not to go in prison. Right, go ahead.
Prior to 2015 and the legalization of same-sex marriage in the United States, the United States government had never given gay people the right to get married. So
Right.
did they have a right to get married prior to 2015? Did they have a right that the government had taken away?
Not legally. Right, not legally.
Any right whatsoever?
Not legally. It's my opinion. They should have. There's
Okay.
no objective right somewhere. All right, let me ask you this.
Okay,
Where
no, hold
in
on.
your
Hold on.
atoms-
Hold on. I'm not quite done yet. Hold on. So prior to
Right.
2015, the government had not given them any rights. And so you agree they did not have a legal right to get married. Now they do have a legal right to get married because the government had given it to them. So
That's
one thought that
legality,
comes,
right?
so one thought that comes to mind is, in what way are Christians taking away their rights? Because we never took them away to begin with, and we're not taking away now because they didn't have it then, and they do have it now. So what way am I taking away the right to get married?
You were restricting their freedom and not minding your business. Basically, do you want somebody else's opinion to forbid you from getting married? Of course not.
Oh, but that's
not fair. Basically, it's not. It's issue of fairness, not rights. It just doesn't feel fair. You know,
Mirza, that's exactly my point, though. Against your view, is that you said, do you want someone else's opinion to take away your rights? Of course not. And I'm saying that's why I think your view of social contract theory is corrupt, because in your view, it's only human opinions that are controlling everyone else and taking away people's views. In my view, it's not human opinions ever that take away view. It's your views are determined by reality. Now, again, I think that I recognize you disagree with that. I recognize you disagree with that, but notice. Okay, but hold on. But notice, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I said, I get you disagree with that. And again, we can talk more about it next week because that's the topic of the show. But notice the very thing you're upset about Christians doing is using their opinions to take away people's rights is the very framework of your social contract theories that says it is only human opinions that are used to take away humans' rights. So why would that make you upset if that is the very moral framework in which you operate, is that it is human opinions that get put into law through social contract theory and become the norm of society? Why is that wrong?
Because my opinion is based on my self-interest, my nature, and logic. I want gay people to have same rights because I want to have same rights. That's the sense of fairness. When you have little kids, they notice something is unfair to them. You know, why you gave him more? And as they get older and they develop empathy, then they can see fairness from other people's point of view. And that's just human nature. The reason I want gay people to have rights is because A, I have empathy for them. B, I want to have rights. Does that make sense? Now you're saying, well, God said X, Y, Z, and there's no arguing with that. And you're saying that's objective truth, except, you provide no proof that it's objective truth. It's just your opinion. That's just the way it is. I don't see... The impasse is you believe you're objectively right, and I am saying prove it, and you can't prove it. Let me ask you this.
Okay, hold on.
Okay,
I'm giving you a ton of time, and I'm giving you a lot of time to talk,
right.
and I'm trying not to cut you off, but hold on. You have to speak accurately based on the conversation that we've had. You keep saying, I'm telling you to prove it, and you can't prove it. And I'm saying, hold on, Mirza, I'm just not proving it right now. We're going to have a conversation next week. I don't want to get into next week's conversation right now. Next week, we'll talk about it, and then you can see whether I've proven it or not. And so I would love a little bit of a response to saying, okay, I get that you think you can prove this, Ryan. I don't think that you can, but I'll be interested in hearing next week, blah, 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 blah. And so I think, let's reflect on kind of the things that hopefully we've at least come to an agreement on so far. I think what though that is clear right now is that I think that you have done an incredible job of showing at least the beginning part of this chapter and why I'm trying to lay out why this is so important. Because as the introduction to how we started all of today's show was that this view of whose concept of human dignity is going to reign supreme really is going to determine how we view humans and how laws are put into place and whether it is arbitrary or whether it is something that exists outside of ourselves. And I think, that's I think the big key difference is within your system. What you are complaining about right here is you want your opinions put into law, and you really don't like it when a Christian opinion is put into law, right? You want your opinions of, I don't want to get murdered and I want to see gay people get married and I want to see this. Those are opinions you have. And if those can get put into law and become the social contract theory, then you're fine with that because your views have become in the majority, and it doesn't matter that your view now actually discriminates and oppresses and sidelines other opinions and people who think differently because it at least agrees with you. But when a Christian like myself, in your view, is doing something similar, if all I'm doing is taking my opinion and trying to get my views in law and not caring how how it affects gay people or others, then that's seen as this horrible evil. And so my question is, how is it not evil when you're doing it? How are we not applying this standard equally to everyone and saying anyone who takes their personal preference and opinion that is arbitrary and tries to force that into law, then affecting everyone else to live similarly, that's wrong.
Because I'm not forcing anyone to do anything other than not harm me. If gay people want to get married, that does not affect me at all. I am saying they should have freedom because I want freedom. Basically, I want for myself what I want for them. That I'm not. I am giving them what I want, and they want the freedom, and I want freedom. And you're saying, if you assume some objective morality, then you're assuming that you can tell other people how to live their lives when it's really none of your business.
But your freedom isn't true freedom. They can't do whatever they want. So you are restricting them.
You cannot hurt other people, right? You cannot hurt other people, basically.
Okay, so that's at least one line that you would say that you are taking away an ability that they have is if someone says, I think it's a good thing to hurt other people, then
F you, right? I don't care. I don't want to get hurt.
Okay, so
let me ask you this. You keep asking. Hold on, I want to ask you this point.
Go for it.
You keep saying about human dignity and value and stuff. Where in your atoms and molecules is your dignity and value?
Oh, that's a great question. It's not. If it were, then it would not be inherent. Because if my dignity were in my atoms and molecules, then the more atoms and molecules I have, the more value I'd have, and the less atoms and molecules I have, the less value
Not necessarily.
I have. Right?
Not necessarily, but the question is where is it? What gives you value? And I know the answer to. I have my own answer, but are you saying God gave it to you?
So in a Christian view, our value and dignity is inherent to who we are, I think in the nature of our soul as well. So it's an immaterial component to us that is grounded based on our nature of who we are as human beings, given to us by God as he created us in his image.
Where is it? Where is it located?
It's not a physical thing. You can't just go find value.
So dignity. If it's not something physical, what is it then?
It's non-physical.
What is there? Physical things, and what else is there? Concepts,
there
opinions.
There's not thoughts are not physical, but we have them.
Right. But they're not. No, they are physical. They're actual firing of your neurons. They are actually physical. We can see them. We can measure them. We can scan them.
So that's conflating the physical brain with the thought. I don't think the thought is equal to that of the brain. I've done whole shows on this before, and I think I forget, but no, I would say no, your thought is not the brain molecule.
Right, and software is not hardware. The thing is, it's a thing that exists in reality that has some effect. But you're talking about concept. Value is a concept. Money has value because I say so. Gold has value because I say so. Same with dignity. Dignity is a concept of how we treat each other. There's no dignity and value on Mars because there's no people there. So you're saying because this is our personal thing, you're saying, well, this comes from my God. You're basically imposing your values and opinions on other people who don't agree with your God.
So I think that's not necessarily. I think that's slightly equivocating, or there's different ways in which value can be applied. There clearly are things that have a subjective value to them. Someone asked the other day if, would I go spend $500 to go watch a basketball game? Is that ticket to a basketball game worth $500 to me? No, not at all. I probably wouldn't even spend $5 on it. But someone else who loves that team will spend $500. So there are things that absolutely have value that is imparted by the person, as you mentioned, gold or silver. If you're on a desert island, gold is useless. And so it's not valuable to you. But just because there are some things in which their value is not intrinsic, there absolutely are things in which have instrumental value. Their value is based on their usefulness. That does not mean it's a fallacy of a hasty generalization to say, well, some things have instrumental value, therefore everything has instrumental value. That logic doesn't follow. And I would argue that there are things that have instrumental value, right, and there are things that have intrinsic value, and we can look at that in different ways.
Well, no, value of something is always to someone. You're saying there can be value without someone to value it. How can that be?
Because, well, let me just put it this way, because we can be wrong. If I do not value you, Mirza, I would be wrong because you are valuable.
And you can be wrong. It's fine with me.
Because you are intrinsically, objectively valuable as a human being created in God's image. If I do not value you and treat you with dignity and respect, then what I'm doing is wrong. That's the difference. If you were only instrumentally valued, meaning your value only came from what you do, then if I don't value you because you don't do X and X is only valuable to me, then I'm not wrong in that. And so that's the difference, is that because you as a human being are intrinsically, inherently valuable, that if I do not subjectively value you, then I would be wrong. And that's why
you can value me based on your values and morals and opinions, but that's still your thing. That's still in your mind. There's nothing outside of me that compels you to value me.
See, I think that's where I would disagree. And that's where I think there's a difference between a Christian view and a secular view, is that a Christian view says you, Mirza, are objectively, inherently valuable, and therefore I am compelled. I have a moral duty. I have a moral ought to value you. And if I don't, then I am wrong. In fact, that's what, let me finish with this, and then I'll give you the last thought. There was a quote in here I didn't read. I'm in the introduction. Sorry, here really quickly. Let's see, where was it? Oh yeah, I did read this at the beginning. It says, Christianity alone provides the best solution for coherent reason to value a human person, and here it is, and the necessary authority to confidently guarantee it. And I think that's the difference, is that there is because of morality is objective, there is a moral duty upon me to ascribe value to you, to where if I don't, I am in the wrong. And I don't think that can be true within a subjective framework.
So
last
can't
thought?
You see that in fact you said again the last word, right?
Yeah.
So in fact you're saying it humbly, but what you're saying is I am objectively right and I am imposing this on you. Basically, you're not valuing my opinion. You're saying I am right and you are wrong based on your faith. That is the thing. I recognize I could be wrong, and therefore you should have freedom to do what you want as long as you don't hurt me or other people. That's the whole pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Christianity doesn't give you life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Christianity says do X, Y, Z, obey your master, this and that. But I recognize, that I should live according to my best ability, according to my best reason, according to my values, and everybody else should as well. And that just kind of makes more sense to me. Anyways, thank you for taking my call.
I said I'd give you last thought. Can I just say something really quick? I thought it was valuable there. I want to believe, and maybe I'm wrong here, and you can correct me, and I'll give you the last thought actually, is I think that I value your opinion, not by saying that you're right, because that's not a valuable thing to do, just telling everyone they're right. I think I value your opinion by giving you an hour on my show to share your opinions with me and all my followers. And then I actually value your opinion enough to say, I want you to share it. I'm not going to shut you down. I'm not going to cancel you. I'm not going to block you. And I am going to do my best to thoughtfully, intellectually engage with your thoughts rather than just going, Mirza, you're crazy, you're ridiculous, and then laugh at you and cancel you from my show. And I also value your opinion, I think, by not trying to get you locked in jail because you're not a Christian. I'm not trying to just make Christianity the law of the land and say, let's get the majority on board and let's lock up all those atheists in jail. And so I think there's ways that we can say, look, I think that you're wrong and you think that I'm wrong, but you clearly value me enough to call into my show to have an hour-long conversation, and I value you enough to let you share your thoughts and actually say, okay, I want to think deeply about what Mirza is saying and engage with it, because I actually think that everyone listening to can benefit from this, because this is a conversation between two competing worldviews, and there's a lot to learn here. I think for someone to show up in the live chat and say, this is stupid, Ryan's wrong, Mirza's wrong, I'm not watching this, and just leave, I think that shows they don't actually value thoughts. And so I don't think valuing someone's opinion means saying they're right or agreeing with them, but I think giving them the time and saying, I want to hear you and I want to think deeply about what you're saying, is a way in which we show dignity and respect to people who think differently, which is one of the points that I brought up in chapter 1. So hopefully I modeled that here today.
Right. To me, value is recognizing the other person could be right and not just being polite and nice. But I get what you're saying. Anyway, yeah. I forgot. Anyways, thank you so much for taking my call. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mears. I always love chatting with you. It gets a little spicy at
Bye.
times, but I think we're both passionate and I love it.
We love arguing. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. Bye, Ryan.
Bye. All right, everybody. Oh, hey, this I think was maybe a good primer for next week. We're going to be talking about ethics and moral reasoning, a student's guide by C. Ben Mitchell. Go to Crossway. This is part of the series, Reclaiming the Christian Intellectual Tradition. It's a 16-part series that I'm going to be working through one of these little booklets each month. So again, the next one is The Great Tradition of Christian Thinking. That'll be February. So pick up these little books and follow along with me and bring your questions and thoughts and objections to it. Again, Matthew. January 28th is an interview with Dr. Fuz Rana on human origins, Adam and Eve. February 4 is an interview with Charles Taliaferro on an introduction to natural theology. And then on February 11 is part 2 of this series, looking at abortion. So anyways, a lot of fun topics coming up. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow. A lot of other videos will pop up over here helping you think well about the Christian faith and culture. And hopefully that you have enjoyed this conversation. I love chatting with Mirza and people who think differently. That's why I welcome your calls and your questions. And hopefully I engage well. I don't know that I always do it, but that is the goal. And hopefully it's a model for others as well to try to learn from. And hopefully we can all have better conversations on things that we find important and are passionate about. So with that, continue to think deeply about God, Christianity, and Jesus, because they are worth thinking about. See you next week, everybody. Bye.